Hey everyone, I just wanted to make a quick video here. It'll be a few minutes long. As you know, a lot of my videos are pre-recorded from a previous semester. I try to update those every year or two maybe when doing these. And for our next lesson um, on North Africa, Southwest Asia, we really have a big current event that's happening right now. So instead of going in and redoing all the lecture video, because we cover a lot more countries than just the one that we're talking about here, I decided this would be a good discussion topic for this module, and some of this is going to be on your tests and assignments. The reason I'm doing this is because I want us to have a discussion about this, because this is something that, one, is currently ongoing, two, it's been ongoing for a long time, longer than my lifetime even, and three is a lot of people have a lot of ideas about this and maybe some misconceptions about what's going on. So I thought that this would be a really good real world lesson that we can do right now on a current event that's happening, that's something that's really relevant to our course, which is World Regional Geography. Now, unless you live under a rock and never watch any news whatsoever, the last few days have been very chaotic in the Middle East, um, particularly the country of Israel. So I know just from some of the discussion and Google Earth exercise questions that I've graded so far in this course, many of you have your religion in pretty high regard, which is great. I don't judge what somebody believes in, which religion you have to happen to be. All that's irrelevant to me. But this part of the world is very, very, I guess, relevant to almost all the big organized religions. So that makes this particular part of the world, especially Israel, sort of an interesting place and a flashpoint for these religions and people that believe in one of these big three religions. And when I say the big three, I mean Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. Those are the big three. All three of those originated from roughly the same place in the vicinity of Israel, Lebanon, Jordan, Egypt, those countries all in that area, and what we typically call the Middle East. Now, in our lesson plan, I'm going to go over specifically what the Middle East means with regards to the countries and which are involved in that and which aren't. But in general, during my lifetime, and probably most of you watching on the news, you'll see this general area referred to as the Middle East. So that's just what's easy for me to say right now. But I'll go over that more in our typical lecture video that's in your lesson. So what's going on over there? So if you watch the news, you're going to see that some, and I'll just say it bluntly, some Muslim or Islamic terrorists belonging to a group called Hamas have attacked Israel, and pretty brutally. It was a large-scale attack, the largest in many, many years. A lot of people were killed. I'm going to share a link with you on a news story from ABC News. Just in case you haven't seen any of the news, you can watch that clip. It's a 6-minute clip, and it will pretty much get you caught up on exactly what's happening there. Now, it was from a couple of days ago. So the casualty numbers in there have changed since they ran that. At present, the last I saw today, it was up to around 1,200 Israelis or people in Israel were killed in that initial invasion by Hamas. I say mostly Israelis. There were 14 Americans they now know that were in that group that were killed. There were some other nationals. There was actually a music festival going on for young people close to this area. A lot of those people died. I know, a few Mexicans in there. Um, German nationals were in there, so some other countries were represented in this group that I'm generally calling Israelis, but that group of people, it's up to 1,200 deaths now. Many women and children. This was a terrorist act. Make no mistake about it. This is getting into the ISIS territory on brutality. It was indiscriminate killing. They've taken approximately 100 hostages. They kidnapped them and took them back into the Gaza Strip, which I'm going to tell you all about that in just a minute. And now they're threatening to start killing them if Israel doesn't do what they want them to do, which is stop attacking the Gaza Strip. Since this invasion occurred, the Israelis were surprised, which is surprising in itself because generally their intelligence is very good, and to miss something this large was really a black eye on them and really not normal for them. They did take care of the militants. They either went back to the Gaza Strip or have been killed since it started. And now Israel is absolutely unleashing a bombardment on the Gaza Strip. They're attacking any place that they claim that there's Hamas activity. Unfortunately, this area is very densely populated. The Gaza Strip is one of the most densely populated places on Earth. So when you send bombs in there, you're not just going to kill the people you're aiming at. You're going to kill everybody around. So that's what's happening right now. I'm not saying that's good or bad. I'm just saying that's what's happening. So what I want to do, though, I just gave you what's happening right now. There's a lot more to this story than just that. It's complicated, just like anything else is in this world. A lot of things seem cut and dry. They're not. They never are. The Hamas militants that I'm talking about, I don't want to say represent, but they are fighting for the liberation of the Palestinian people. Now, if you don't know who the Palestinian people are, the Palestinian people are the Arabs/Muslim people that lived in this area, are native to this area before Israel became a country. They are the natural inhabitants of this area. If you don't know history, Israel was created. It was not a country until after the Second World War. It was basically designated by the United Nations. They carved out some territory in this area because, again, this area was the birthplace of the big three religions. So I guess the feeling was after the Holocaust and World War II that the Jewish people should have a right to a homeland somewhere that could be theirs. And again, I'm not passing judgment on any of this. I'm just stating the facts. So when this country of Israel was created, of course, as you can imagine, the people already living there, which was the Palestinians, were not too happy about that because basically they're having their land stolen from them. They're being displaced and moved out of their homes for these other people to move in. So regardless of which side you sympathize for the most, if people came into Kentucky and said, y'all got to go, we're going to move in somebody else, people would have a fit, and that's what the Palestinians did. So right now, Palestinians do not have a country of their own. There is no Palestine. Palestinians are an ethnic group that don't have a home, similar to the Kurds that we'll talk about in our lesson plan as well. The Kurds being in Iran, Iraq, and Turkey. There's no homeland that they call their own country. So basically, since that happened after World War II, these two groups have been fighting each other for this land. And it's always been pretty ugly. It's just the fact of the matter. So, you're going to see a lot of people in the country. You're going to see probably, if you have a news source, if you lean Democrat or Republican, you're going to see the narrative from each side. Well, this side's doing this, and this side's doing this, and the Democrats are supporting this, and the Republicans are supporting this. Basically, what it comes down to is just common sense and thinking with reason. So, do the Palestinians deserve to have a country of their own? In my opinion, absolutely. They had their land taken from them. There should be a place that they can call home. Having said that, does that justify some of the things that this group, Hamas, which is a terrorist group, does that justify what they do? Absolutely not. These are two different ideas and concepts that we're talking about here. So just because somebody says, well, I kind of feel bad for the Palestinians because they don't have a country, every single Palestinian family and individual is not a terrorist. They're not part of Hamas. Hamas is one group within that large population. It's just like saying, all Muslims are for ISIS, or Americans are for the KKK. That would be the same generalization that you're making there. So there is some sympathy to be had for the Palestinian people having their land taken from them and not having a country to call their own. Again, I'm going to say this again because I don't want anybody to misconstrue this. That does not excuse the tactics, the barbaric nature of the terrorist groups that are involved here. So this particular page, I'm not going to link this. I'm just basically using this as my notes. I'm going to run through real quick the history of this conflict. I'm just going to hit the highlights. I just didn't want to leave out anything important. There's so much in here. I don't want to talk to you for an hour on this one video. But basically, I'm going to skim through this and just point out a couple of pertinent things. This is from the Washington Post, by the way. I don't mind to link this if any of you want to read this. You can easily Google it. But basically, you see here, Israel declares independence. You have this territory that's carved out for them by the United Nations, and their country is created. Shortly after that happens, of course, the Palestinians are not going to be very happy about that. So there's fighting from the beginning. And it's not just the Palestinian people that live there. There are ethnic Palestinian people that live in Jordan, in Lebanon, in Syria, maybe a little bit in Egypt. They're getting attacked from all sides. So it's easy for Israel to kind of say, we're getting attacked by everybody, so we have to defend ourselves. Regardless of who's right or wrong in this, it's happening and they're defending themselves. So you have the Suez Crisis. Again, 1948 was the start of this. 8 years later, you have what's called the Suez Crisis. Basically, Israel and Egypt went to war. Egypt went into what we call the Sinai Peninsula, and I'll show you that in a map here in just a minute that I'm going to share. Or I can pull it up right now probably. I'll just show it to you real quick here. So this is Israel right here. This is the Sinai Peninsula down here. This is Egypt. Now what we're talking about while I have this map up, Israel, which is here in the whiter color, the kind of light tan color, this is Israel, but also the West Bank is Israel, and this is the Gaza Strip. It's Israel as well. However, as we're going to see on this page in just a second, there was a deal reached in a couple of peace treaties actually to where these areas are self-governed by the ethnic Palestinians that live there. So the Gaza Strip and the West Bank are both, in theory, governed by their own Palestinian groups. The Fatah is in the West Bank. It's a more peaceful group, more wanting to make a peace deal with Israel. Now, that's not to say they're not radicals in here, too, or they're terrorist groups like Hamas has members in the West Bank as well, but they're not as prevalent. Hamas actually took over, I think it was 2006, in the Gaza Strip, and they're actually a combination of a political party and a terrorist group. So they won the elections there in 2006, and ever since then, Israel has blockaded this area. Israel controls the water, controls the electricity that goes into Gaza, so they can cut that off anytime they want, and they did that when this attack occurred. So right now, they don't have electricity or water here. When Hamas took over in 2006, Israel did some sanctions against Gaza Strip and limited imports and stuff like that. This is a very densely populated area right here, and it's right up against Egypt. This Gaza Strip was actually taken from Egypt in a war that I'm going to talk about in just a minute. Israel took it from Egypt. There's also an area up here called the Golan Heights. It straddles the Syrian-Israeli border. There's a lot of Palestinians that live in this area, and there's some violence up here along the Lebanese border as well. Now, the primary group up here for Palestinians is called Hezbollah. If any of you are a little bit older, you're more my age range, and remember back in the 90s, Hezbollah was the big group that Israel fought back then out of Lebanon and Syria. They still do fight. They're not gone. They're just taking a little bit of a back seat to Hamas right now. So this is the area we're talking about. Jerusalem is right here. And you're going to notice that there's a carved out area into the West Bank where Israel took that and took over Jerusalem. Now, I'm going to jump to another map real quick and show you. So this, the green represents Palestinian land. The aqua blue, or the blue, represents Jewish land. So right after World War II, Palestinians, this is all their land. 1947 to 48, when they were making this Israel, you see what Israel actually had. The blue was what the Jewish people were granted to have the country of Israel. Between the 20 years in between this, Israel and the Palestinians had several wars. Israel, some of it was self-defense. Sometimes they invaded Egypt or they invaded Syria. And they took a lot of this land from the Palestinians. I mentioned they took the Gaza Strip from Egypt. The West Bank and the Gaza Strip, again, were self-governed for years. They still technically are. The Gaza Strip especially is. The West Bank, it's dissolved a little bit. And as you can see, this is 2005. Even though the Israelis claim that they allowed the Palestinians to self-govern, they're settling in here and they're eventually swallowing up this land as time goes on. And the United States, even though we are heavy allies to Israel, have looked down on this because they're basically taking land, even land that's supposed to be with the Palestinians. They're taking more and more of it. Many outlets and news organizations will say this is an apartheid state like South Africa, meaning the Jewish people and the Muslim people are separated totally. They're not integrated whatsoever. Now you see this light-colored blob right here on the map. That's Jerusalem. And in this original plan, the plan was, because Jerusalem is so important for the big three religions, that they were going to keep that under international rule and not let any one of those three dominate that city. You can see the incursion here by 1967. Israelis have gone in and basically taken Jerusalem. Today, it's not been too many years ago, just a few years ago, they changed their capital city from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. For a couple of years, the United States did not recognize it. I'm pretty sure, I should have looked this up before I started this, I'm pretty sure they do now. It's split in the world who recognizes that as the legitimate capital of Israel and who does not. So this is the map. These are the maps that I wanted to show you all. This is the more current map right here. So you can see the areas that we're speaking of right here. So the 1967 war was called the 6-Day War. This was kind of the big one. It was pretty short. They basically started fighting with each other, and this is where Israel took the Gaza Strip and the West Bank pretty quickly and easily, and it remained in their power. If any of you have ever seen the movie Munich, 1972, there was a infamous terrorist attack at the Olympics where several people of Jewish origin were killed by Muslim terrorists. I'm not sure if it says which group it's just this Palestinian extremist here. I don't know if they belong to one of the most specific groups. Another war in 1973, not hugely important. Now, starting in 1978, this is when we start talking about the peaceful Palestinian group called the PLO, Palestinian Liberation Organization, headed by Anwar Sadat. They started making peace deals so that they can govern that West Bank and the Gaza Strip. And that worked for approximately 10 years, and then there was unrest in 1987. You've got to remember, when we talk about unrest, both sides are poking at each other, all right? The Palestinians are not going to be happy at all until they get their own country. However, like I just pointed out on those maps, the Israelis are also continuing to infringe upon their supposed self-governed land, in the West Bank especially. Doesn't happen as much in Gaza just because Gaza is basically a city. I mean, there's nowhere to infiltrate there. It's just a big urban area along the coast there. 1993, you've got some similar peace accords in Oslo, Norway, kind of reinforcing the 1978 ones. I'm not going to get into a lot of detail on this because I've already talked quite a bit. In 1995, the Prime Minister of Israel was assassinated. Now, one thing I wanted to point out on this is, so when I say he was assassinated, you probably think, oh, the Palestinians did it. No. It was actually, and you probably can relate, in this country right now, we're having this kind of rhetoric and this kind of fighting amongst the political parties. It was actually an ultra-right-wing Jewish person that was mad at the Prime Minister because he was trying to negotiate peace with the Palestinians. So some of his own people killed him because they want to annihilate the Palestinians and not make peace with them. So I wanted to point that out because that stuff seems far away from us, but after January 6th, I mean, we're getting there. We have extremists in this country too. So we need to take note of some of these things that's happened throughout history. You have some more uprisings in the year 2000. And here's where I mentioned earlier, in 2006, Hamas was elected to lead the Palestinian government in Gaza, and that's when Israel started imposing sanctions on them because they consider Hamas a terrorist group. Israel attacks Gaza in 2008 because there were some rockets fired, nothing to the scale that we saw this weekend, but some of the same kind of things. They're firing rockets at Israel, killing Israeli citizens. So Israel attacks. Again, 2012, an assassination on the Hamas military chief by Israel. That person was killed. Let's see what this map says. Oh, this is just a population density map. And then you've got stories like this. I could go through this all day, but yeah, here it is. 2017 is when the U.S. recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. As you can imagine, the Palestinians did not like that very much. So there's more protesting in Gaza, and I want to point out this. In 2021, the Israeli police raided a mosque in Jerusalem. So if any of you know a lot about the religious city of Jerusalem, you know there's a lot of stuff really close together. Mosques, churches, all that stuff is right next to each other. Israel felt like that there was some planning activity going on in this mosque. It's the most holy mosque to Muslims, and they raided it and went in, and there was violence inside. And as you can imagine, that's just like if Muslims went into your church and started roughing people up and shooting them and everything else. Did not go over very well. The reason I'm really pointing this out is because I saw on the news today that the leaders or the masterminds of this attack this weekend, this is when they started planning this. When this happened, this is what was there's been problems forever, but this was the last straw for them, and this is why they planned to do what they did. And you had some other terrorist attacks in Israel, and then you have what is happening today. So that's basically a timeline of what we're seeing right now. I left out a few of these things because it's a lot of the same kind of stuff. They're fighting, they're doing this, they're doing that. So that's what I wanted to share with you. Was this story about what's going on and giving you a background, and you probably have an opinion about it. I don't know if any of you are Jewish or Muslim in this course. If you are, I respect whatever anybody is. I know there's likely a lot of Christians in here because that's a dominant religion in our area, in our country. So Christianity, even though it's not directly in the fight here, has a lot riding on what happens over there because of the holy sites in the city of Jerusalem. So everybody kind of has an interest in this. So I just wanted to give you the background facts of this. I wanted to tell you what has happened there kind of in a really quick way to get you updated on what's going on, why this is happening. The players are involved. There is, we throw the term terrorist around kind of loosely in today's world. You could make an argument by definition that some of the things, definitely what Hamas did is terrorism. You can make cases, and we're doing it to Russia right now. We're calling Putin a terrorist because he's bombing funerals and bars and nightclubs and stuff, churches where people are gathered. Really, anytime you're targeting civilians, that can be considered terrorism. As you might imagine, the Palestinians think that their Israelis are terrorists. Now, I'm not going to get into that argument, but you have to understand that there is more. You have to have empathy for different groups to at least understand how they think. You don't have to agree with them. And that's something that all of us need to learn a little bit more, especially in this country today, to get along with each other and to be able to work things out. Just because I empathize with somebody, I might understand why they feel the way they do. That doesn't mean I necessarily agree with it. That just means that I understand their perspective. And that's what I'm trying to get across to you all in this discussion. So, what I want to do for this module's discussion is talk about this. And I'm taking a chance because this type of topic can get really heated. And I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not going to allow that to happen. So, if you have a real strong opinion about this, I want to hear your opinion, but keep it nice, keep it respectful. Don't get upset if somebody has a different opinion. These are the kind of things that this world needs to learn how to work out. So, in our discussion, I'm just going to ask a couple of questions in there. I haven't even thought of what questions I'm going to ask yet. But I want a discussion. I want y'all, you can respond to each other. I don't have to be in the middle of all this, but you have to keep it clean, you have to keep it respectful, and you have to respect other people's points of view. I've seen some very, very strong reactions from different groups of people, and when you see a reaction like that, you automatically want to point a finger if you don't agree with them. Oh, they're terrorists, or they're this, or they're that. No. As I said before, somebody might support the Palestinian agenda of wanting their own country. That's perfectly reasonable. They kind of got screwed back when their land was taken from them. That's understandable. What's not acceptable is the way Hamas, Hezbollah, some of these radical organizations, how they conduct their business and what they do to human beings. That's what's not acceptable. And it's not acceptable from either side. If Israel goes in and starts assassinating civilians anywhere, that's not acceptable either. I don't care what country it is or who it is or what they do. Our military has done that in the past. Heck, our country was partially founded on that type of behavior, to be honest. If you think about how the Native Americans were treated, of course that was a different time than we're dealing with right now, but it happened. And it's just a reality that people have to accept. And in today's world, it's too easy to find information that just suits your own narrative that you want to hear and not really what the reality is. So that's why I want us to discuss this. And again, I'm not on any side. I'm going to respect everybody. I'm going to respect your opinions. And hopefully it'll be a productive discussion that we can get along and really talk about what's going on over there. So that's it for this video. I'll put the discussion up in the next few days and hope all of y'all are having a good fall break right now.